Yo, what's up guys, Wakosi here, back with another Genshin Impact video. Version 4.2 Sprial Abyss just released and many people say that this one is finally difficult again. But is it? Let us take a look at all the floors, not just floor 12, and see if they are truly difficult or if I have a few tips on how to make them easier. So first up, let us take a look at the teams that I used and what characters you could be using instead if you don't have those specific ones. In the background you can see the artifacts, weapons and so on of my characters while I explain a few things. The without a doubt best characters to use for this version of the Sprial Abyss are Hydro characters. There are a lot of Pyro enemies in there and Pyro shields obviously, so we need Hydro characters to take care of those enemies. And that is important for all the floors. Characters you can use are Novelette, Farina, Yelan, Kokomi, Child, Zincho, Mona or Barbara. All of them work, depending on your team composition. Fortunately, this time around we don't really need to pay attention to the blessing because this one works passively. It will do damage whenever a character gets healed. When it comes to your other characters, it depends on who you have. Let us go over the two main teams that I use this time around and how your team could look like if you don't have the same characters as I do. The teams that I'm going to show you now are the teams that I use for floor 12. When it comes to the floors before that, you can basically use whatever you want to use. And the first team is a Novelette, Farina, Kazuha and Layla team. Novelette himself obviously is a linchpin for this entire team. Farina is there as a support / buffer, especially due to her elemental skill, which will help a lot with the Pyro shields. Another character you can use in her place is Yelan or Zincho. Both of them work. Both of them are broken, so if you have them, use them instead. After that, we have Kazuha. He is here due to the Viridescent Vanilla set, but you can also use any other animal character in his place. Sucrose, Venti, Lynette, all of them work. And lastly, we have Layla for shields. If you don't have Layla, use Diona. If you don't have Diona, use the Geodaddy. Any shield character basically works. And with this team, you shouldn't have any problems when it comes to the first half of floor 12 for each chamber. Also, just as a note, the reason why we are using a shield is because we don't want Novelette to get interrupted, right? If you're using his charge attack and you get interrupted, that is kinda a reason to restart the entire chamber, basically. The second team I used was a team centered around Aggravate and a little bit of Bloom. Obviously, for this one to work, you need a Dendro character. I use Nahida as the main enabler, but you can also use most of the other Dendro characters, even the Traveler. After this, we need a Hydro character, once again for the Bloom, right? And you can simply refer to the Hydro characters I mentioned before. The Electro character we are going to use, or the one that I am going to use, is the best character in the game, Yaemiko. If you don't agree with her being the best character in the game, then let me know in the comments. Other characters you can use are Fischl, for example. Both of them work because they are both off-field DPS characters due to the turrets they put down. Yaemiko is basically the 5-star version of Fischl when it comes to that. And lastly, we use the only 6-star character in the game, Bennett. He's broken, so use him. And with those two teams you can easily clear floor 12 without having to restart the whole thing in order to switch compositions. Now let us take a closer look at each floor. We are going to talk about floor 9 to 11 first, because believe me or not, there are people who struggle with those. I did once too, so I know what it's like. But don't worry, I'm here for you. When it comes to floor 9, there's really not a whole lot to talk about. There are a few enemies that can be affected with Penuma and what is the other one called? I think it was Osea. Yeah, I think it was Osea. Either way, the new Fontaine mechanic, use some of the Fontaine characters for that. It will make the whole floor a lot easier. Besides that, use animal characters to group up your opponents to make the whole one faster. And the same basically applies to floor 11 and floor 10. Only that those floors also have the dreaded Pyro shields in them. So use Hydro characters to break those. Once again, any of the characters I mentioned before work for that. We also have some of the newer enemies in here, especially in the third chamber of floor 11. They hit hard, so try to dodge their attacks. Generally speaking, and I kind of repeat what I said in one of my other guides for the Abyss, if you're having problems with those floors, right, it is most likely because your characters are not leveled enough. Floor 9, in my opinion, requires your characters to be leveled, at least some of them. I'm talking about level 90 here, your talents are level 8, stuff like that. Maybe not necessarily level 10, but somewhere around that ballpark. You also should have some decent artifacts, 5-star artifacts preferably. They are leveled just like your weapon, that kind of stuff, right? When it comes to floor 10, team composition becomes more and more important. Your support character should also be built by now. Not necessarily level 90, but around level 80, stuff like that, right? And floor 11 kind of combines all of that into one. As such, let us now move on to the actual challenge, floor 12. Let us see why people claim it to be difficult this time around. Alright, floor 12. The first chamber has annoying enemies right out of the get-go. A lot of pyro shields, wolves, breachers and so on in the first half, and the big boy matrix in the second half. The matrix itself is not new, we all know this one. Bring a Dendro character to deal with the cloaking mechanic, which by the way is the reason behind my team composition earlier, and just have fun with an HP sponge, right? It's just a gigantic HP sponge, basically, the matrix. Because of that, let us now talk about the first half. I can see people having problems here, because there's a lot going on, right? For this one, it is important to understand your main priority, and that one is your enemy shields. The other guys will go down passively. Just focus your attention on the shields. That is the reason why we are bringing so many Hydro characters this time around. The first and second wave are kinda easy. We have 2 Helichol mages and a few smaller enemies. Obviously there are wolves, but like I said, shields first, rest after, right? If you're having problems with the wolves, maybe use a direct heal character. I use Lila. Lila provides shields, doesn't really help a whole lot when your character's already lost HP, right? So if you're having problems here, use characters like Kokomi, Barbara, Bennett, and so on, right? Direct healers, basically. The third wave is where people might really start to struggle. 2 breachers and 1 lector. Try to use a character that can stun the breachers by using the Pnuma and Osaya mechanic. In my case, it's Novelette and Farina, but you can also use any of the other New Fontaine characters. And besides that, focus your attacks on the Lector in order to trigger his shield as soon as possible. Also pay attention to the meteor thing he summons, because if you destroy that one, he loses a lot of shield energy. And if you pay attention to all of that, you shouldn't have that many problems when it comes to the first chamber of floor 12. Which brings us to chamber 2. For this one we get a little bit of a breather because it is a lot easier than chamber 1. The first half has some smaller enemies. Try to clear them as quickly as you can so that you have more time for the second half. They hit hard, at least some of them do, but you can also freeze them. Try to work around that. The second half has the big Jade Plume in it. If you're following my team composition, then try to use your electro damage to trigger the enrage state. Dodge whatever attack it is going to do, and once it's stunned, you can freely DPS it for a few seconds. And after that, just keep doing that over and over again until it goes down. And finally, we have chamber 3. The second half is once again the Icewind suit, and we already had that since the launch of Fontaine, so not a whole lot to talk about here, but the first half is new. The first half is actually more difficult this time around. That is because it is about timing, I would say. First you need to take care of 2 of the big samurai dudes. Keep in mind that they need to go down at the same time, otherwise you would lose a lot of time on your counter. After that, we have 2 pyrolectors. Don't be me, try to group them up. You can do that in 2 ways. Use your animal character like Kazuha, but actually succeed in it, unlike me. Or position yourself next to one of the lectors and wait for the other one to walk over. Once he's close enough, you can use your animal character to group them up. As you can see, grouping is a key aspect here. Once they are grouped, you simply take care of them just like you did with the other one in chamber 1. And that is kinda all there is to this version of the Sprial Abyss. Personally, I feel like this one was easier than the last ones, but let me know in the comments what you think. Did you manage to get 9 stars? What characters did you use? Let me know in the comments. Also, if you have any suggestions for other characters or other good compositions, then post them down in the comments as well. Maybe it will help other people. Besides that, thanks for watching, leave a like, maybe a sub, and have a great day or great night wherever you live, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.